Well, hello, and welcome to the Joe Show, where truth is our mission, reality all around, sad as we see it, and frankly as well. I'm Joe Spina. I love Speedy Gonzalez and Pepe Le Pew. I found Amos Andy hilarious. 007 was my kind of guy, and Don Juan was the enemy of my eye. I give Washington and Jefferson the rightful due. Say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I salute the flag too. Yet somehow I'm a racist, a misogynist, a fascist, a Neanderthal, and a white supremacist, all of which is great news to me. But in case you didn't know it, Queen Elizabeth is a racist, so is the royal family. How do I know? Well, Meghan Markle told you so on the Oprah Winfrey Show, so it must be so. How about this one? Disney pulls Dumbo, Peter Pan, and a host of other films from the children's profile over what they say are negative depictions, which in themselves are subjective. Dumbo came out 1941, about the time of World War II, the advent of World War II. Why they pulled Dumbo or put it on the prohibitive list for children under 7 stretches one's credibility of understanding. But they claim that there was a scene, and I quote, in Dumbo, where a bunch of crows were flying around to a musical number, and they pay homage to a racial minstrel show where white performers with blackened faces and tattered clothes imitate and ridicule enslaved Africans on southern plantations. The leader of those crows who was singing away in the Dumbo film, his name was Jim Crow, which, if you know anything about history, shares the name of laws that were enforced against racial segregation in what was known as Dixieland, or the southern states post-Civil War. Jim Crow laws were looked at as being repressive and racist, which they were. And I suppose if, in fact, it was intentional that the crow was called Jim Crow, then you can say that Disney has a point. But the point really should be is that throughout our history and the history of mankind, injustice have taken place in all nations and all societies. We're not saying that they're good, bad, or indifferent. They just took place. Well, actually, they're bad. But we move on. And what's wonderful about the United States is that we're self-correcting. We recognize these problems and we try to take care of them, and we have, by and large. And there's no more work to do, obviously. Working toward perfection is a long and arduous task. So, whether calling that particular crow and Dumbo Jim was intentional or coincidental or otherwise, who knows? Suffice it to say, if it was intentional, therefore it must be racist. Now, that's, this is what we call a cancel culture. It's happening all over the place. Someone divines something in their mind, and that's the end of it. I mean, you're a racist, you're an Neanderthal, whatever. And there's no recourse. When's the last time you beat your wife? Something like that. Now, in 1953, everybody liked Ike, or most everybody liked Ike. Happy Days, etc. And a picture came out called Peter Pan. A lot of fun. I saw it, and subsequently my kids saw it. It's a great little flick. But it's now 2021, and Biden is in his first term, and he's gone bonkers when it comes to racial injustice and Black Lives Matter and white supremacy. Now it's Asian, which is, and here's the funny feature about that one. When they talk about Asians being subjective to stereotype and hateful acts against them, nobody asked the second question, who is doing the hateful acts against Asians? And I hate to tell you, it's a subgroup. Well, we'll get into that some other time. So Disney deemed it was inappropriate, that is, Peter Pan was inappropriate for viewing for children under 7. According to Disney's current reasoning, why it didn't reason back then, who knows? Their current reason is that Peter Pan and others above, Dumbo and a few others, and I quote, include negative depictions and or mistreatment of people or cultures, and these stereotypes. Now get this, these stereotypes were wrong then, and they're wrong now. So if they were wrong then, why they released the pictures in the first place? And if they're wrong now, how did that evolution take place? We have to start making that connection and that conversation, as you know, the famous word today, we need a conversation. Maybe we just ought to live our lives and move forward. That's what we ought to do. And all of this stuff is a bunch of silliness. And then again, we have to find out who's defining these terms for us, because, you know, the definitions may not be agreed upon. You know, someone says something is de facto, doesn't mean it's de facto. Follow the science. You know, Frankenstein was a scientist. And there are mysteries. And science is not very good at solving mysteries. Well, maybe they can, but mysteries are mysterious. That's pretty good, huh? So it is that Disney reasoned that Peter Pan had to be put on the show. Also, Peter Pan portrayed Native Americans, Native people. I suspect that that would be indigenous people, indigenous American pre-Christopher Columbus, in a stereotypical manner that reflects neither the diversity of Native people nor their ethnic or authentic cultural traditions. It shows them, the indigenous people, quote unquote, Indians, misnamed, in an unintelligible language, or speaking an unintelligible language, and repeatedly refers to them as Redskins. Now, io parlo italiano anche, and when I speak a foreign language, as I just did then, it's unintelligible to those who do not speak Sicilian. So this definition of unintelligible language, I mean, I'm sorry to say that anybody that speaks a language outside of a language to which one is accustomed is unintelligible in itself. Peter Pan and the Lost Boys, they claim, Disney, engaged in dancing, wearing headdress, and exaggerated troops. You know, they had their hair up in a bun, a man's bun, we call it today, etc. And why that is considered stereotypically racist is beyond me, but then again, who am I to say? As for Swift Family Robinson, which came out, I believe, around 1960, which is one of my favorite movies, Disney movies, by the way. Disney reasoned that the pirates who antagonized the Robinson family, and they certainly did, are portrayed as stereotypical foreign menace. All of a sudden, who knows? Were they jihadists? Who knows? I mean, many appear in yellowface. Well, that wouldn't be jihadists, I don't think. Or brownface, that could be. And our costumes in an exaggerated and inaccurate manner with top-notch, like I mentioned before, you know, man buns, top-notch hairstyles, quees, robes, and overdone facial makeup and jewelry reinforce their barbarism and otherness, whatever that means. Otherness, that's a wide open phrase today. Barbarism, I quite understand. I think I do. I mean, you know, if someone rolls up on a chopper, wanting to date with one of my daughters, and has a swastika tattooed to their forehead, I consider that person a barbarian. He's not going to go out with my daughter. But that's me. So, what is interesting is that Johnny Depp, who made a fortune and great fame playing Jack Sparrow, a pirate, from the Caribbean, Pirates of the Caribbean, that his dress and the way he approached it, he was mimicking Keith Richards, who doesn't have a yellow face or a brown face. As a matter of fact, he's British, and he's a guitar player for the Rolling Stones. So, say what you may. Now, as for the Aristocats, which came out in 1970, there's a Siamese cat whose name is Shun Gon. Now, Shun Gon is depicted with stereotypical traits such as slanted eyes, buck teeth, and sings in poorly accented English by a white actor who plays the piano with chopsticks. Now, if this is an animated picture, which it is, how do we know whether the actor is white, pink, blue, or yellow? We don't. Actors, guess what? Portray others. So where is it a bad thing that a white actor plays the piano with chopsticks? We don't know that obviously we don't know that the actor who is singing in poorly accented English, we have no clue as to that person's ethnicity. But then again, on this one, however, Disney may have a point. Regardless or irrelevant, that the voice was that of a white actor is irrelevant. However, slanted eyes, buck teeth, poorly accented voice, that's stereotypical. That's a negative stereotype. I mean, it's pretty tough to get around that one. Now, let me get to the nub of the matter. I absolutely adored The Sopranos. Love them. Watched every single episode. The Godfather trilogy was like a history lesson to me. Goodfellas, The Bronx Tale, Casino, every single one of them stereotypically depicted my ethnicity as being boom boom, mafiosi, gangsters, wise guys, etc. Now here it is. Both my parents were born in Sicily. Guess what? Neither one of them is a mafioso or a mafiosi. Not for that matter am I. Yet growing up, and to this day, when someone says, by the way, Joe, well, what's your heritage? And I say, I was born in America, an American citizen, I'm an American. My parents come from immigrant parents from Sicily. The minute I say Sicily, invariably, they ask if I'm, or my parents or whatever, associated with the mafia. And I always respond by saying, well, Mata. Now, little known. Here's a little known. Get that one. In 1891, 11 Sicilian Americans were lynched in New Orleans by a mob after they had been acquitted of a crime that they didn't commit in the first place. But that didn't ring right with the folks down there. They say, hey. So they stormed the jail, pulled them out, and lynched them. It stands as one of the largest single mass lynchings in American history. I haven't heard a word from the cancel culture about that injustice. Nor have I heard anybody demanding reparations for we Sicilians for the injustices that we faced as a minority in America. Now, and finally, to stereotyping. In itself, stereotyping is neither good nor bad. It's a double-edged sword. When you go to see a physician, you're stereotyped. Your ethnicity matters because certain ethnicities have a propensity for a particular ailment that others don't. And it gives the physician an insight as to what may be ailing you. So stereotyping in that instance is a positive. I remember Juan Williams of Fox News fame. He's the House liberal. He used to work for NPR, National Public Radio. And this was around right after the 9/11 attack on the United States. And Juan, who is a liberal, now to liberal, said quite candidly, pre-cancel culture, that if he went to an airport, Logan Airport, LaGuardia, wherever, and was about to get on the plane and he saw a group of young Middle Eastern types or looking in garb about to get on that plane, he was going to hesitate. He wasn't necessarily going to get on it. Well, all hell broke loose, the stereotyping, how can you have such negative thoughts, ba-beep, ba-ba, ba-ba, ba-boo. You know, Juan's probably right. Most people are hesitant or they see something that doesn't quite fit right with them and they walk to the other side of the street. I don't think it's a racial thing. I think it's just a defense mechanism. I mean, if a bunch of old ladies are in walkers getting on a plane, I'm not worried one bit about them, blowing up the plane or hijacking the plane. But if I see a bunch of guys, young men, and I'm not particularly concerned about their color or where they come from, but the way they look, I mean, if they got, like I said, 8 balls tattooed to their forehead, and they got chains, and they got, swastikas on their leather, beat up leather jackets and the rest of it, I'm a little bit hesitant to get on that plane because, there's a risk factor involved there. And for anybody to tell me otherwise is blowing smoke. So I'll end with this thought. And this goes right back to what the genesis of this was all about to start with. 2 people are in love, they get married. They happen to come from backgrounds, different backgrounds, ethnic, racial, or whatever. They're about to have a joyous occasion, the birth of a child. Now, is it ever any wonder that they, their friends, their families may say to themselves, gee, I wonder what the child might look like. On that note, until we meet again, have a great week. Day, month, year, whatever.